Hi, everybody.
What you don't know is we just got in a small little argument before pushing record because my wife likes to slurp when she drinks hot
No, it's just the
liquids.
lemon is in the way, so I have to avoid the lemon.
What is up, everyone? Welcome back to our YouTube channel. If you don't know, we are Kara and Caleb.
I'm Kara.
And I'm Caleb.
Today we want to talk to you about one thing. I would say probably the most important thing when it comes to making this relationship work.
Because let's get real, I'm complicated.
Oh, we are complicated.
No, really, this is the single-handedly the one thing that makes us work. And I will also say that as a man, this idea, this concept that we're going to talk about today, it personally revolutionized my life. And this one thing that we want to talk about is why it is so important to feel emotionally safe inside of a relationship.
Absolutely. So emotionally safe, we're going to talk about what it means.
Yeah.
When we say emotionally safe, what does that mean? We're going to talk about why it's important, what it actually does in the context of relationship, and then we're going to talk about 3 practical ways that you can implement more emotional safety.
Foster,
Implement more emotional safety in your
I want to be heard.
relationship and relationships. This is not just about
Yes.
marriage. This is also about friendships, working relationships, any kind of relationship. If you create emotional safety, it's clutch.
And so what is emotional safety? It's kind of self-explanatory, but just to kind of expand on it a little bit.
Break it down
a little bit. It's just feeling safe inside of the context of a relationship so that you can show up fully you, so that you can express the deeper parts of yourself that make you you without the fear of judgment, without the fear of criticism or pushback. Because we've all been there before, right? We've been there where we try to express something that we're excited about, or we just show up fully ourselves and we're met with criticism.
Yeah.
We're met with being told that we're too much, or that we're silly, or that we're stupid. And immediately what that does is it shuts us down because we don't feel safe, and rightfully so.
Yeah, it takes away the safety. Really, a safe space is that, right? It's a space in which you can enter into and offer a vulnerable, soft side of yourself.
Yeah.
So why is it important? Really,
So many reasons.
Really, it's important, especially in the context of relationship. It's important because as human beings, we are all looking to feel seen, known, heard, right? And in order for us to feel seen and known and heard, we need to have space to be vulnerable. And when we show up vulnerably and we offer an intimate, deep part of ourselves, that creates this bond. It creates intimacy. It is the gateway to connection.
Yeah.
That's Brene Brown, right?
You nailed it, honey.
Brene Brown. And really, it is the gateway to feeling connected and intimate with someone. So in any kind of relationship, why it's so important is because if you want to show up vulnerably as your full self, there has to be that environment. I almost think of it like as a fenced-in yard for you to feel the confines of safety.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about connection.
Yeah.
What makes relationships work, whether it's a deep friendship or an intimate relationship, is feeling connected.
Yeah.
Right? When I don't feel connected, what's really happening in a lot of ways is I don't feel, and this is just me personally speaking, I don't feel seen or I don't feel known. Right? And when I don't feel seen or known, or when I feel misunderstood in life, that's unsafe. And so I kind of shut down parts of me.
Yeah.
Right? But now, whenever Kara is able to come in, communicate, and we're going to talk about how we can foster emotional safety in a relationship, when she's able to communicate things and I'm able to communicate things because we have this safe space where we both feel emotionally safe, I can express deep parts of me. And she can, and this is another video that we can do, is learning how to hold space, because my wife is the queen of holding space, and that has changed my life because it's allowed me to show up and to talk about hard things or vulnerable things. And as a result, I feel more seen, I feel more understood, and I feel more connected, which makes me want to love you even harder and deeper. Right?
Yeah.
And so those are really why it is so important.
Yeah, so we're going to give you 3 practical ways of how to implement, foster more emotional safety in your relationships. But before we do that, I think it's worth maybe having a caveat and saying ways that break emotional safety.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it might be worth pointing out that when we shut down someone, when we criticize someone, when we are defensive with someone, Those are
unsolicited feedback.
Unsolicited feedback. Those things all break.
That's a big one.
Emotional safety. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's talk about 3 ways that we can foster more emotional safety. I'll give you number.
How about
1.
you practice that right now with me?
Creating emotional safety. So thought number 1 for you is change your language.
Oh.
This is a big one.
Yeah, this is a big one.
Use I language. So what I mean by this is I'm feeling really overwhelmed and frustrated right now. Instead of, you're making me feel really crazy and you're making me feel frustrated.
Yeah,
right?
That's very accusatory.
So instead of blaming you for my emotion, I'm owning my emotion. I'm holding it and saying, can you help me look at this because it's making me feel uncomfortable. Then Caleb has the opportunity and option to come into that with me and say, yes, I'd love to look at that with you. Yeah. So really changing the language to own and truly owning, changing language to and owning your emotions is key in creating emotional safety.
Because when you do that, like I'm just thinking of, like, I am so glad that Karen and I, we got married later in life, but the great part about that is we've done so much work. And I and you both came into this relationship knowing how to use our language.
Absolutely.
The right way, especially if we're not seeing eye to eye.
If I had married you 10 years ago, everything would have been his fault.
But what that does for me is when you use I language, I feel like this, when this happens, can we talk about it? I feel now less defensive, where I can now see Kara and the things that she's going through and how she's feeling in a certain situation. And I can now respond with compassion and empathy because I don't feel like it's a direct attack on me.
Yeah. So if I say, I'm feeling frustrated, as opposed to, you're making me feel frustrated. Yeah. Your inclination is to say, no, I'm not. I didn't do that. So there's nothing.
You did this, this, and this.
Yeah. So there's nothing in that moment for him to be defensive about if I just own, wow, I'm feeling so frustrated.
Absolutely. Second point would be, it's a simple one. And maybe you do this, but I don't think it's something that I've had to be more intentional with. And that's just learning how to give positive feedback to your friends, to your loved ones, and do it often.
All the time.
This is so important. And you can talk maybe a little bit about love languages because I think that's important to note. But Kara, for instance, is starting a business and she's vulnerable. It's raw and it's scary to put yourself out there and to show the world parts of you or to put yourself out there open for a longer fall to the bottom, right? And so what I try to do is I try to multiple times throughout the day, just whisper to her and to let her know, you're doing a great job. Oh my gosh, you're inspiring me. Whatever and I'm genuinely saying that and I mean that. It's not empty words, but I want to make it a point and be intentional with seeking out all of the ways that I see Kara growing in the vulnerability and putting herself out there. And I want to honor that. I want to honor that in her because it's worth being honored. And I feel like as a result, you feel more safe maybe, and you can speak for yourself, but you feel more safe now to come to me whenever you're feeling fear, whenever you're feeling remarkably vulnerable as you're starting this business.
Yeah, I think this one, there's a little bit of common sense to it, right?
Yeah.
Like use kind words. But also, I think we all get into relationships with people, and when they become our best friend and the person we're around all the time, it's probably easier to note the things that we're annoyed with or not good. And I think we've kind of made a commitment in our relationship to name what is good and to name out loud to each other ways that we see each other.
What you focus on grows.
Yeah, and I think too, just most of humanity is having a hard time in some way, and people need to be told that they're doing a good job. Okay.
Number 3.
Lastly, learn how to self-soothe. This one is good. So this
Wait, what do you mean by self-soothe?
This third point of learning to self-soothe means learning, it kind of attaches to number 1 a little bit of owning your emotions, but learning how to self-soothe means that when Caleb comes to me with something and he's like, I'm feeling so frustrated about this thing, my inclination is that my energy, my angst might rise, right? So learning how to self-soothe means noticing and being aware of what I'm feeling in reaction to what he's sharing, and then learning how to calm that down. Because I think a lot of us probably grew up with childhood wounds and we've got inner child trauma. And there are spaces that just by default we don't feel safe. So when someone raises their voice, I don't really feel safe. I feel uncomfortable because I don't like shouting, right?
Which I've had to learn.
And I've had to learn how to calm myself down if he's getting worked up about something and raising his voice, because it's not about me. So really learning how to self-soothe that space and make sure that you're not internalizing someone else's frustration as something it doesn't need to be internalized as.
And also a great tool or a great reason why learning how to self-soothe is so necessary is, I mean, self-soothing is necessary in every area of our life when we feel activated.
Yeah.
Right? If my central nervous system feels unsafe and that fight or flight mode comes into play, I need to learn how to self-soothe in that moment, whether I'm sitting at a red light or I'm having a very hard conversation with my wife. But I know that I have had the tendency to shut down conversations. Like you show up, you want to talk about something that's hard, and I'm not ready for it, or it's too hard for me, and I just shut it down. Stop, we're done talking about this, and I walk away. It's almost like equivalent to hanging up on somebody on the phone, which is just
very rude.
Don't do that. But as I have matured and learned how to self-soothe now, inside of hard conversations, because we have to have brave conversations in life, in our relationships. We have to have hard conversations. That's where all the goodness is. When we learn how to self-soothe, especially if I'm feeling activated inside of a hard conversation, I can self-soothe, I can regroup, and then I can enter back in to that relation or into that conversation. And that changes everything because you feel like I'm showing up. Right? You don't feel abandoned. You don't feel disrespected. And now I'm actually engaging. And you do this over time. And it's just like going to the gym and working out muscles. You do it almost unconsciously over time without even thinking about it. And then by default, your relationships begin to grow deeper in intimacy, deeper in connection.
And when we do need to share something hard with each other, or we do need to have a hard conversation, I think one baseline for all of this work is make everything an invitation, right? So saying to Caleb, hey, do you have the space for me to
that's good.
talk about this? Because then he can say, no, not right now. I actually am emotionally tapped out. Let's talk about it tonight over dinner. And making everything like, hey, do you have time? Do you have emotional capability to hold this experience?
Because sometimes I don't.
Right
Sometimes I don't. And it's rude for us to assume. And we do this with the people who are closest to us.
Absolutely.
It's like how many times you call up a family member or a family member calls you and just unloads. And I'm like, hold up. Hey, it's taking a lot of time for me to practice boundaries and being like, yo, not okay. Let's schedule a time to talk about this. Because I'm in the middle of trying to make my life
We call that
work.
Emotionally vomiting.
Yeah.
It's really rude to vomit on someone.
But there you have it. Those are 3 ways that you can begin to
foster emotional
safety inside of a relationship. Last thing that I want to say, and I'm just thinking about this, for you to feel emotionally safe inside of a relationship, I think it's important that you know what you need to feel safe.
Yeah, it's good.
So what do you need? Sit with this question. What do you need inside of a relationship to feel safe?
Yeah.
And then when you understand that, you can begin to communicate that with the person sitting on the other side of you or next to you. And then that can be the starting point to actually cultivating emotional safety inside of your relationships. Thanks for watching.